Martin and I were married 43 years. He died suddenly, and I buried him on a clear spring morning, clutching a rose and hoping, praying, Nicholas would come walking up the path. But the space beside me stayed empty. No call, no excuse. Later that afternoon, I found out where he really was. Cancun. Cocktail in hand, sunglasses on his head, grinning like he hadn't just skipped his father's funeral. Not sick, not stranded. He just didn't come. I sat there in my black dress, still smelling Martin's cologne in the air, and stared at that photo. He made his choice, so I made mine. I changed the will. Because what my son didn't realize, what he still doesn't know, is that grief didn't make me weak. It made me sharp, focused, and once I started pulling on the thread of his betrayal, it led to things he never thought I'd uncover. He skipped the funeral. He thought I'd mourn in silence. But this old woman, I don't go quietly. But before we begin, dear, comment under this video where in the world you're watching from today. Now let's start from the beginning. The day we buried Martin was the kind of perfect spring morning he would have appreciated. Crisp air, clear sky, birds singing like they hadn't gotten the memo. 43 years of marriage, and there I stood, alone beside his casket, while Father Michael's voice drifted over the mourners. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I kept scanning faces, looking for the one that should have been there beside me, Nicholas, our only son. My fingers tightened around the white rose I held, thorns pressing against my skin. Not enough to draw blood, but enough to keep me present when all I wanted was to float into the numbness that had been my companion since Martin's heart gave out 3 days ago. Where was he? I'd called him immediately after it happened. Left a voicemail with service details when he didn't pick up. I even sent a text, something I rarely did with my arthritic fingers. He's on his way. Traffic, perhaps. Or his flight was delayed. The excuses tumbled through my mind like clothes in a dryer, round and round, never quite convincing. Father Michael closed his prayer book. And now, let us commit Martin James Henderson to his eternal rest. The finality crashed over me. I stepped forward on borrowed legs and placed my rose on the casket, my vision blurred with tears. Goodbye, my love, I whispered, my palm flat against the polished wood. Somewhere I still expected to feel Martin's warmth beneath. I stepped back, and that's when it hit me. Nicholas wasn't coming. Not today. Not for this. Mrs. Peterson squeezed my hand. Martin's bowling buddies nodded solemnly. Even Janet from his office, the one he always complained talked too much, stood silently respectful, but the space beside me remained achingly empty. Eleanor, I'm so sorry for your loss, people murmured after the service. Their words washed over me like water over stone. I nodded, thanked them automatically, accepted hugs from people whose names escaped me. Is Nicholas coming later? Martin's cousin Margaret asked, eyes darting around. He's dealing with it in his own way, I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. The drive home blurred. The house felt wrong without Martin's reading glasses on the coffee table, without his slippers by the door. I collapsed onto my sofa, still in my black dress, clutching my handbag like a life preserver. He must be grieving, I said to the empty room. That's why he couldn't come. My voice startled me. Had I already started talking to myself? Martin had been gone less than a week, and I was becoming a widow cliché. I pulled around my shoulders the throw blanket Nicholas had given us 3 years ago. It still had the tag when Martin died. We'd never used it, saving it for a special occasion. What foolishness. as if any day with loved ones isn't special enough. I remembered Nicholas as a boy, gap-toothed and giggling as Martin tossed him up. At 8, proudly showing off their model airplane. At 16, sullen but still accepting my hugs. At 22, graduating college, the first in our family, with Martin beaming brightly. When had we lost him? When had he become someone who'd skip his father's funeral? I checked my phone, hoping for a missed call or text. Nothing, just our 40th anniversary cruise photo on the lock screen. I opened social media, which Nicholas used often. Maybe there'd be some explanation. The app loaded slowly. Our internet was never great out here. Martin had always said we'd upgrade someday. Another someday that would never come. When the screen refreshed, I froze. There at the top was Nicholas's latest post, time-stamped during his father's funeral. A selfie. My son grinning on a white sand beach, sunglasses on his head, colorful drink in hand. Behind him stretched turquoise waters of a tropical paradise. Day 1 in Cancun. Blessed vacation mode, living my best life. My phone slipped from my numb fingers. The room spun as truth crashed down. He knew. He'd seen my messages. He'd made a choice. My son hadn't missed his father's funeral from grief. He'd skipped it for cocktails in Mexico. I pressed my hand to my mouth, a strangled sound escaping. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. I couldn't sleep that night. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw Nicholas's smiling beach photo, time-stamped 2:17 p.m., right during his father's funeral service. At 3 a.m., I made Martin's Earl Grey tea and sat at our kitchen table, where he'd helped Nicholas with homework and proudly announced completing his college fund. He's going to have opportunities we never had, Ellie, Martin had beamed. No student loans, a clean start. Martin worked 60-hour weeks for 35 years, refusing retirement to ensure I'd be taken care of. He adored Nicholas, taking unpaid days off when he was sick, working extra shifts for those $200 basketball shoes. Dad, these are perfect, Nicholas had exclaimed, strutting around. Martin's joy was worth everything. Where was that Nicholas now? The one who made wobbly world's greatest dad cards? I studied the photo again, noticing an unknown woman's arm. The betrayal felt physical. By morning, grief hardened into something sharper. I called our family lawyer immediately. I need to change my will, I told Harmon. Remove Nicholas as beneficiary. This is significant. Are you sure grief isn't? This isn't grief, it's clarity. I explained everything. We redirected my estate to Martin's nieces and nephews and the library. As Harmon checked Martin's pension, he frowned. There was an $83,000 withdrawal 6 months ago. The room tilted. Impossible. Martin would never touch that. The transfer required his signature and ID verification. I remembered Nicholas's new car, expensive watch, and Cancun vacation. Oh, Martin, I whispered. What did you do? I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Let me see more details, I managed to say. My hands trembled as I reached for my reading glasses. Harmon clicked through to a different screen. There's more, Eleanor. This wasn't a one-time withdrawal. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? There were multiple transactions, starting about 8 months ago. Harmon's voice was gentle, but each word felt like a physical blow. Small amounts at first, 5,000 here, 7,000 there, then larger sums as Martin's condition worsened. I felt like I was drowning. But how? Martin couldn't even get out of bed those last months. He certainly wasn't going to the bank. Harmon's expression turned grave. The transactions were conducted under power of attorney. Power of attorney? I repeated. But I had Martin's power of attorney. Me. According to these records, there was a joint power of attorney. Harmon turned his monitor toward me again. Filed last year. It names both you and Nicholas as having legal authority to act on Martin's behalf. That's not possible. My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. I never signed any such document. Harmon looked uncomfortable. The paperwork appears to be in order. Your signature is right here alongside Martin's. He pointed to a line on the screen. There it was, a reasonable facsimile of my handwriting, except I had never signed it, never even seen it. That's not my signature, I whispered. I never signed this. Never. The implications crashed over me like a wave. Nicholas, my son, the boy Martin had taught to ride a bike, to drive a car, to be a man, the child I had nursed through chicken pox and heartbreaks. I need copies, I said, my voice hardening, of everything. The power of attorney document, the withdrawal records, all of it. Harmon hesitated. Eleanor, are you sure you want to pursue this? Family financial disputes can get messy. This isn't a dispute, I said. This is theft and forgery. The words tasted like acid in my mouth. While Harmon printed the documents, I sat motionless, my mind racing backward through time. Nicholas visiting more frequently after Martin's diagnosis, his sudden interest in our finances, the casual questions about our accounts, our investments. I had been so grateful for his support, so touched by his concern. What a fool I'd been. Here's everything, Harmon said, handing me a thick folder. Eleanor, I should warn you, if what you're suggesting is true, this could have serious legal consequences for Nicholas. I clutched the folder to my chest. Thank you for your concern, Harmon. I need to think. The drive home passed in a blur. Rain had started to fall, matching my mood. I parked in my driveway and sat there, unable to move. The house Martin and I had saved for, had raised our son in, had planned to grow old together in. Now it was just me and a folder full of betrayal. Finally, I forced myself to go inside. The emptiness of the house hit me anew. No Martin humming in his study. No smell of his pipe tobacco lingering in the curtains. I spread the documents across the dining room table, the table where we'd celebrated Nicholas's birthdays, helped him with his homework, cheered his college acceptance. The power of attorney form stared up at me, my forged signature a mockery of everything I thought I knew. Next to it lay the bank statements, withdrawal after withdrawal, thousands upon thousands of dollars, Martin's retirement, our safety net, our future. I traced the dates with a trembling finger. The first withdrawal came just weeks after Martin's diagnosis. The last one, the largest, just days before he died. A memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. Nicholas at the hospice, leaning over Martin's bed. Martin was barely conscious by then, his breathing labored. Nicholas had taken his father's hand, pressed a kiss to his forehead. "Don't worry, Dad," he'd said, his voice breaking with what I'd thought was grief. "I'll look after Mom, I promise." I'd been so moved in that moment, so grateful for my son's strength, his compassion. Now the memory twisted, darkened. He hadn't been promising to care for me. He'd been reassuring Martin that his theft would remain undiscovered. All those months of Martin's illness, While I was focused on medications and doctor appointments and trying to make my husband comfortable, Nicholas had been systematically draining our accounts, using a document he'd forged, taking advantage of his dying father and his distracted mother. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor beside the dining room table, the evidence of my son's betrayal spread out above me like an accusation. "How could he?" I whispered to the empty house. "How could he do this to us?" Tears came then, hot and furious. I curled into myself, my body shaking with sobs that felt ripped from the deepest part of me. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about family, about the child we'd raised and the man he'd become. "How could he?" I asked again, my voice breaking on the question no one was there to answer. I cried myself to sleep on Martin's side, clutching his pillow with its traces of aftershave and peppermint. Grief washed over me in waves, sadness, betrayal, anger, disbelief. By morning, I felt hollow. I took my coffee to the porch, unable to face the dining room with those damning papers, our sanctuary where we'd shared evenings and dreams. I stared at Mrs. Peterson's hydrangeas while silent tears streamed down my face. "Eleanor, are you all right?" Adriana stood at my steps, travel mug and mail in hand, looking put together despite the early hour. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Number, I'm not fine at all." She joined me without hesitation. "Tell me," she said. Everything poured out. Martin's death, Nicholas's absence, the photos, forgery, stolen money. Adriana listened intently, her expression growing serious. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. "I worked as a paralegal for 30 years. Would you like me to review your documents?" I nodded gratefully. "They're all over my dining table." "Let me get you fresh coffee first," she offered. 20 minutes later, Adriana examined everything methodically. "This is sloppy forgery," she muttered, comparing signatures. She took notes on the bank statements, giving me my first glimmer of hope. "What do you think?" I asked. "Your son has committed several felonies: forgery, fraud, elder abuse." "Elder abuse?" I interrupted. "Martin was terminally ill. That's exploitation of a vulnerable adult, a serious charge. Do you have the house deed?" I retrieved it from Martin's files. Our pride and joy paid off after decades. Adriana's expression darkened as she studied one page. "Eleanor, when was the last time you looked at your title deed?" "Years ago." "Why?" "There's a lien against your property from Coastal Investment Partners. Does that name mean anything?" My stomach clenched. "Number, what does that mean?" "Someone used your house as loan collateral 8 months ago. Did you sign anything like this?" "No, we would never." "I believe you, but someone did." She stopped abruptly. "Oh, Eleanor." She showed me the document with Nicholas's name. My son had used our house, my house, as collateral. "He's put your home at risk," Adriana said softly. I stared at the paper. "How could he do this legally?" "I don't think he did," Adriana replied. "Not without your signature." Her eyes flashed with determination. "I want to help you fight this. Will you let me?" I looked at this neighbor offering help when my own son had betrayed me. "Yes," I said, finding strength in my voice. "Yes, please." Adriana reached for her phone. "I need to make a few calls," she said. "Do you mind?" I shook my head, still staring at the papers. My home. Martin and I had scraped and saved for years until it was finally ours. I remembered our celebration after the final payment, dancing in the kitchen while Nicholas rolled his eyes over FaceTime. "You guys are so weird about that house," he'd said. Had he been planning this even then? The thought sickened me. Adriana stepped onto the porch, speaking in low, professional tones. When she returned, her face was grim. "I checked with the county records office," she said. "The lien is properly filed. The loan is $175,000. "That much?" I gasped. "What could he need that money for?" "That's not the worst part. The terms are predatory with an astronomical interest rate and an acceleration clause. 2 payments have already been missed." "What does that mean?" "They can foreclose if it's not remedied, but we can fight this if we prove the power of attorney was forged." "How?" "File fraud charges, get a handwriting expert, make a police report, and petition to invalidate the power of attorney." I nodded through my panic. "My lawyer friend who specializes in elder fraud says we have 90 days from discovery to file. Today is day 1. 90 days," I repeated. 3 months to save my home. The only thing I had left. "There's more," Adriana added. "Coastal Investment Partners is known for predatory loans in desirable neighborhoods. Our area had been gentrifying for years. I think Nicholas planned to let the loan default," she said. "These companies auction foreclosed properties. If he knew when that would happen, he could buy it back cheaply," I realized. He never intended to pay it back. I pressed my palms against my eyes, unable to reconcile this with my son, who once made glittery Mother's Day cards. "What's first?" I asked. "Police report today, then contact the DA about criminal charges and get a civil attorney for an emergency injunction." "I can't afford all that," I admitted. "Martin's medical bills took our savings, and with the pension gone—" "I'll help," Adriana insisted. "I have contacts. We'll find someone who'll take this on contingency." She outlined the process, making the challenge seem insurmountable. "Here," she said, sliding over an affidavit stating I never signed a power of attorney. "This is the first step." My trembling fingers could barely hold the pen. I was about to formally accuse my only child of fraud, possibly sending him to prison. "What if I lose everything?" I whispered. Adriana's eyes met mine. "You won't," she promised. "Not if I have anything to say about it." I took a deep breath and signed. I stared at the coffee maker as it gurgled, my 3rd cup before 9. Sleep had become a memory, replaced by nights analyzing every interaction with Nicholas this past year. Had I missed signs? "You're up early again," Adriana said, entering through the back door. Our new routine: she brought pastries, I provided coffee, and we tackled my paperwork mountain. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, pouring her a cup. "The bank statements kept me up." She nodded, placing a folder on the table. "My DA contact is interested but needs more evidence." Always more evidence. I opened the Martin's Final Days folder containing hospital bills, prescriptions, and the visitor calendar. Nicholas visited just 4 times in his father's final month. The father who coached his teams, taught him to drive, and helped fund his education. "We need to trace where the money went," Adriana said, spreading statements. "Direct links to Nicholas's accounts would be our smoking gun." I nodded mechanically. My eyes burned, my heart physically ached. Each new lie reopened the wound. "Did you call the credit card companies?" "I couldn't. 3 hours on hold yesterday just to be told I needed written requests." "I know it's frustrating, but we're making progress." "Were we?" A week since discovering the lien, and we only had more questions while our 90 days dwindled. The lawyer wants a $5,000 retainer. Adriana's face fell. That's steep. It's impossible. After this month's mortgage, I'll have less than $2,000 left. We'll figure something out, maybe a payment plan. Or what? I snapped. I'm sorry. I know you're trying to help, but this is too much. I walked to the window, staring at Martin's neglected rose bushes. I called Nicholas last night, straight to voicemail. Again. His silence hurt more than the theft. After all the birthdays, Christmases, scraped knees, and heartbreaks, how could he not check if I was okay? Maybe he knows we're onto him, Adriana suggested. Or maybe he just doesn't care. I retrieved a photo album, opening to Nicholas's graduation day, the three of us beaming, Martin so proud of our first-generation college graduate. I keep looking at these, trying to understand when money became more important than us. Adriana placed her hand on my shoulder. I'm exhausted, Adriana. Every day is another battle with lawyers, banks, loan companies, all wanting paperwork I don't have or money I can't spare. I closed the album. Maybe I should just let it go. Sell what I can. Find a small apartment. You don't mean that. Don't I? I sank onto the couch. Is this house worth all this? But it wasn't just walls and a roof. It was 42 years of memories, Christmas celebrations, anniversary dances, Martin's final moments holding my hand. I don't know if I can do this. I'm not a fighter. I'm just an old woman tired of being hurt. Looking around at our life in photographs, I whispered, maybe he's right. Maybe I am too foggy to fight this. I sat staring at the wall, lost in shadow as evening fell. No lamps. The darkness fit my mood. Margaret, you're sitting in the dark, Adriana said, flipping the switch. I winced at the sudden brightness. Sorry. Lost track of time. She studied my face, her expression softening. When's the last time you ate something? I shrugged, unsure if I'd eaten today. That's what I thought. She headed to the kitchen. I'm making you toast and tea. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, but I'm going to anyway. I lacked energy to protest. She returned with buttered toast and tea, her kindness nearly breaking me. Thank you, I whispered. She sat beside me. You need rest, Margaret. You're running yourself into the ground. How can I rest? I see Nicholas's face whenever I close my eyes. I keep wondering what Martin would think. My voice cracked. Would Martin have forgiven this betrayal, or would it have broken him too? Martin would want you to take care of yourself, Adriana said. You can't fight if you collapse. I took a small bite of toast just to please her. I don't know if I want to fight anymore. I understand, but let's not decide tonight. Promise you'll try to sleep. I nodded, too tired to argue. After she left, I finished the food and dragged myself to the bedroom Martin and I had shared for 40 years. I just kicked off my shoes and curled up, hugging his pillow. I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. For one blessed moment, I forgot everything. Then reality crashed back. The doorbell rang. Adriana, right on time. I'd slept 12 hours. I opened the door in yesterday's clothes. You look better, she said, entering. I slept, first time in days. Good. I've been up most of the night. That's when I noticed Martin's laptop under her arm. What were you doing with that? I asked. She set it on the kitchen table. I thought there might be something useful on it. I doubt it. Martin mostly used it for email and woodworking videos. Well, I found something interesting. My heart skipped. What? Remember setting up cloud storage for Martin? It was backing up everything, including text messages. My mouth went dry. Text messages. She nodded. There's a folder with months of data right up until... I sank into a chair. And Nicholas? They texted frequently. She turned the screen toward me. With trembling fingers, I clicked on Nicholas's name and read through months of messages. Early ones were innocent, but then, Dad, I'm in a bit of a financial bind. Could use some help. How much do you need, son? About $5,000 would get me through. I'll pay you back. The amounts grew larger. Then 6 months ago, Dad, I need to talk about something important. Mom doesn't need to know. I felt punched. They were keeping secrets? I read exchanges about power of attorney, securing Mom's future, managing the estate. Martin had resisted. I don't like keeping things from your mother. But Nicholas persisted. It's for her own good. She doesn't understand finance. Then, weeks before Martin died, got the papers filed. The lender approved everything. Martin, I don't know about this. Your mother and I worked our whole lives for this house. Nicholas, trust me, it's temporary. Once my investments pay off, Mom will never know. I couldn't breathe. Martin knew about the loan but hadn't told me. He lied to Martin too, I whispered. Said it was temporary. Adriana gasped, pointing to a message days before Martin died. Don't worry about Mom. Once you're gone, I'll take care of everything. The house will be worth twice as much once I renovate and flip it. Margaret, Adriana said urgently, you need to see this. I stared at the screen, my stomach nodding as we scrolled through countless texts, messages to Martin and screenshots Nicholas shared with Vanessa. Look, Adriana pointed to a thread from 3 months ago. Vanessa, your mom still doesn't know about the loan? Nicholas, nope, and she won't until it's too late. Mom will never catch on. She's too foggy. Vanessa, foggy? Nicholas, old, confused. Half the time she can't even remember what day it is. My face burned with humiliation and rage. Foggy? I'd never been sharper. Sure, I occasionally misplaced glasses or forgot recycling day, but that's normal, not dementia. I'm not, my voice cracked. Of course you're not. Adriana squeezed my hand. He's justifying his actions. Nicholas had planned everything. Nicholas, once the loan defaults, the bank will foreclose. I'll swoop in with a lowball offer, buy it for half its value, flip it, and walk away with a cool $300,000. Vanessa, won't your mom be homeless? Nicholas, she can go to a senior apartment or something. It'll be better for her anyway. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. My only child planned to put me on the street. The same boy I'd nursed through illness, driven to soccer, helped with projects, and sacrificed for. When I returned, Adriana was organizing the messages. This is gold, Margaret. Not just proof of fraud, but intent. That makes it elder abuse, a criminal offense. These messages show premeditation. I collapsed in a chair. I never thought my son's betrayal was unfathomable. People surprise you, Adriana said softly. Sometimes in the worst ways. We worked through the night compiling evidence. By dawn, I asked, what happens now? We take this to your lawyer, file for an emergency injunction. The court should invalidate the loan and could press charges against Nicholas. Charges? The thought of my son facing jail made me dizzy. Margaret, he committed a crime. He took advantage of his dying father. She was right. This was about Martin, too, honoring our life together and seeking justice. By mid-morning, my lawyer reviewed the evidence with disbelief. This is extraordinary. Can we stop the foreclosure? I asked. With this? Absolutely. We'll file today. 3 days later, we had a court date. Nicholas's desperate calls went to voicemail. Mom, please call me. There's been a misunderstanding. Mom, we need to talk. Don't do anything rash. Mom, seriously, this is all just a big mistake. I deleted each without responding. The night before submitting the final evidence, Adriana brought wine. To courage, she toasted. To friendship, I replied. I couldn't have done this without you. Once this is in, she cautioned, there's no going back. I thought about Martin, our home, and Nicholas's words. Mom'll never catch on. She's too foggy. I'm ready, I said firmly. It's time Nicholas learned that this old foggy brain still works just fine. The courtroom reminded me of a church. Polished wood, hushed voices, a sense of importance. I smoothed my navy dress, Martin's favorite. It felt like armor. All rise, the bailiff called. My knees creaked as I stood. Adriana squeezed my hand. Mr. Simmons adjusted his tie. He'd explained everything twice, but my mind kept drifting to Nicholas's milestones, moments when I thought I knew my son. Judge Coleman entered, tall with salt and pepper hair and a severe bun. Kind eyes, though. Be seated, she said. I checked my watch. 9:15. Nicholas wasn't here. Part of me hoped he wouldn't show, too ashamed. Another part desperately wanted to see him. The judge reviewed the case, forgery, elder abuse, fraud. Each word felt like a stone in my stomach. Is the defendant present? She asked. Not yet, Your Honor, Nicholas's attorney replied, young, expensive suit, insincere smile. Mr. Harmon is on his way. The judge frowned. Let's proceed with the evidence. Mr. Simmons presented our documents, the forged power of attorney, drained pension statements, falsified loan signatures. The door opened. I didn't turn. I knew it was Nicholas. A mother knows. Mr. Harmon, Judge Coleman said coolly, how kind of you to join us. I studied the bench's wood grain, controlling my breathing. Nicholas's attorney claimed he had verbal permission to manage our finances during Martin's illness. I glanced over. Nicholas sat sprawled, almost smirking. He caught my eye and winked. I looked away, burning with shame. How could he be so smug? We have additional evidence of intent, Mr. Simmons said. The clerk read Nicholas's texts. Mom will never catch on. She's too foggy. Once he's gone, I'll let the house go into default. How much longer is she going to live anyway? Gasps filled the courtroom. I stared at my aged hands, hands that had changed his diapers, wiped tears, applauded his achievements. Nicholas's smirk vanished. He whispered frantically to his attorney, who disputed the message's authenticity. They were verified by court experts, the judge stated, looking at Nicholas with disappointment. Mr. Harmon, anything to say? Your Honor, His voice cracked. This is being blown out of proportion. I was just venting. Save it, she interrupted sharply. The courtroom fell silent. Just the clock ticking, air conditioning humming, my heartbeat pounding. Judge Coleman looked at me, her expression briefly softening before she leaned forward. In light of this evidence, I find that Nicholas Harmon did knowingly forge power of attorney documents to control his parents' finances without consent, Judge Coleman declared, his voice making my chest tighten. He misappropriated funds from Martin's pension and placed an unauthorized lien on the family home. I exhaled slowly, fingers digging into the bench. After weeks of sleepless nights and betrayal, someone in authority finally confirmed what I knew was true. The court rules these documents null and void, the judge continued. All transactions under this fraudulent authority are invalidated. Nicholas shifted as his confidence drained. His attorney whispered something to him. The lien on 1422 Maple Avenue must be immediately lifted within 5 business days. My home, where we'd raised Nicholas, celebrated holidays, where Martin took his last breath, was securely mine again. Additionally, the court finds evidence of elder abuse and financial exploitation triggering the state's Slayer statute provisions. The statute, typically for murderers seeking inheritance, now included serious financial exploitation of the elderly. Nicholas Harmon is disqualified from receiving any inheritance from Martin Harmon's estate or Eleanor Harmon's future estate. Nicholas jumped up. You can't do that, that's my— Sit down, Judge Coleman snapped. Another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. He sat, face flushed with anger. This court orders Nicholas to repay $82,473 plus interest to Martin Harmon's estate within 30 days. Adriana squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, grateful for her support. Court adjourned. The gavel's crack broke something loose inside me. It was over. I'd won, but it felt hollow, necessary but not triumphant. I'd lost my husband and now my son too. Mr. Simmons smiled. Congratulations, Eleanor. This is the best outcome possible. I nodded silently as Adriana helped gather my things. Let's get you home, she said. Walking out, I heard rapid footsteps behind us. Mom, wait. I paused. Part of me wanted to keep walking, but the mother in me turned. Nicholas stood there, tie loosened. Mom, you can't do this. This is Dad's money, my inheritance. It was never yours, I said steadily. It was what your father and I worked for our entire lives, meant to care for me, then someday help you, but not like this. I'll appeal, he threatened. I'm in trouble, Mom, real trouble. I felt a flicker of concern, then remembered his texts. Old people shouldn't have nice houses anyway. How much longer is she gonna live? I'm sorry you're in trouble, but that doesn't give you the right to steal from your parents. I turned away with Adriana's support, Nicholas's shouts fading as we descended the courthouse steps. The air smelled like spring, like new beginnings. What now? Adriana asked, looking at the clear blue sky, thinking of Martin and our shared dreams. I said, let's do something good with what's left. I sat across from Mr. Simmons in his office, my hands folded in my lap, watching as he scrolled through the document on his computer screen. The late afternoon sun slanted through his blinds, casting warm stripes across the polished desk between us. So this is what you want to do with the pension funds? He asked, glancing up at me over his reading glasses. Yes, I said firmly. Every penny that's recovered from Nicholas. The thought of my son still sent a sharp pang through my chest, but it wasn't quite as debilitating as before. The Martin Harmon Memorial Fund for Hospice Care. Mr. Simmons nodded slowly. It's a wonderful idea. Those nurses were angels during Martin's final weeks. They were, I agreed, my throat tightening. I remembered how they'd known exactly when to adjust his pillows, when to offer water, when to simply hold his hand. how they'd explained every medication, every change with such gentle patience. They gave Martin dignity when his body was failing him, and they gave me strength, I suppose, when I needed it most. Mr. Simmons tapped a few keys, making a small adjustment to the document. The structure is sound. Once the court-ordered repayment comes in, the money will go directly into this trust. We've specified that the annual proceeds will fund continuing education for hospice nurses, with priority given to those working at Lakeside Hospice, where Martin spent his final days. That's perfect, I said. Martin always believed in education. He'd like knowing he was helping others learn. Wasn't that the truth? Martin had read to Nicholas every night until he was 12 years old, long past when most children want their parents reading to them. He'd helped with science projects, checked math homework, attended every school event. The memory sent another stab of pain through me. How had that little boy turned into the man who'd tried to steal our home? Mr. Simmons must have noticed my expression. Are you certain about this, Eleanor? The money is rightfully yours to use however you wish. I nodded, pushing away thoughts of Nicholas. I'm certain. I don't need it, not really. The house is free and clear now, and I have my teacher's pension. This feels right. I took a deep breath. I'd like to write a dedication letter to go with the trust documents. He slid a notepad across the desk. Take all the time you need. I picked up a pen and stared at the blank page for a long moment. Then the words began to flow. To the angels who walk among us in comfortable shoes. When my husband Martin was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, our world shattered overnight. Through the surgeries, the treatments, the gradual dimming of a bright light, you were there. You didn't just tend to his body, you honored his spirit. You listened to his stories, laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones, and treated him not as a patient, but as a person. Martin was a high school history teacher for 42 years. He believed that learning never stops, that growth is always possible. This fund is established in that spirit to help those who help others during life's most difficult journey. With deepest gratitude, Eleanor Harmon. I pushed the notepad back across the desk, wiping a tear from my cheek. Mr. Simmons read it quickly, then looked up with a warm smile. This is beautiful, Eleanor. We'll have it printed and included with all the formal documentation. Thank you, I said, feeling a curious lightness in my chest. For the first time since Martin's diagnosis, no, if I'm being honest, since before that, when I first noticed the yellowing of his skin that he'd tried to hide, I felt something like peace. We finished signing the paperwork, and Mr. Simmons walked me to the door. You've done a wonderful thing today, he said, shaking my hand. Martin would be proud. Would he? I wondered as I drove home. Or would he be heartbroken about Nicholas? Probably both, I decided, just as I was. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Adriana's car parked at the curb. She was sitting on my front porch, a canvas bag beside her, watching the birds at the feeder Martin had hung years ago. Court victory celebration? She asked, holding up the bag as I approached. I brought lemons from my tree, fresh bread, and that white wine you like. I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes again. You're a godsend, Adriana. Truly. Nonsense, she said, standing and giving me a quick hug. That's what friends do. Besides, I want to hear about your meeting with the lawyer. We went inside and I told her about the trust while she squeezed lemons for a simple pasta sauce. The kitchen filled with bright citrus scent as she moved confidently around my kitchen, finding pots and utensils without having to ask where anything was. "So the money will help train more hospice nurses?" she asked, stirring the sauce. "That's perfect, Eleanor. Just perfect." "It feels right," I said, pouring us each a glass of wine. "Like something good can come from all this mess." We ate at the kitchen table, the windows open to the mild spring evening. After dinner, Adriana insisted on washing up while I rested on the porch swing Martin had installed when we first bought the house. She joined me a little later, handing me a cup of tea. "Look," she said, pointing to the flower bed along the front walk. "The daffodils are blooming early this year, just like Martin promised." I stared at the bright yellow flowers, swaying gently in the evening breeze. "What do you mean?" "What do you mean?" I asked, staring at the daffodils swaying in the evening breeze. Adriana settled into the porch swing beside me. "Don't you remember? Last fall, when Martin was planting those bulbs, you told me he said something about them blooming early." The memory washed over me like a warm wave. Martin, already thin from the treatments but insisting on kneeling in the garden soil, his baseball cap shading his eyes from the autumn sun. His hands, those beautiful, capable hands, pressing each bulb into the earth with such care. "You're right," I whispered. "He said, 'These will bloom early, Ellie. They'll be the first sign of spring, and when you see them, you'll know everything's going to be all right.'" I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't entirely sad. Martin had known. Somehow he'd known I would need that reminder, that promise of renewal. "He was always one step ahead," I said, wiping my cheek with the back of my hand, "even at the end." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood. When Adriana left, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning dawned clear and warm, unusually so for early spring. I made coffee and carried it out to the back porch, where the morning sun cast long shadows across Martin's garden. The daffodils there were even more abundant than the ones in front, a veritable sea of yellow and gold. I heard Adriana's back door open and close. A moment later, she appeared at our shared fence, a pitcher in her hand. "Good morning," she called. "I've got fresh lemonade. Care for some company?" "I'd love some," I answered, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face. "Come around through the gate." While I waited, I ran my fingers along the weathered arm of Martin's favorite Adirondack chair. For 47 years, he'd sat in this very spot, grading papers, reading mystery novels, watching birds at the feeder. Now the chair was empty, but somehow it didn't feel abandoned. Adriana appeared with her pitcher of lemonade and 2 glasses. "Perfect morning," she said, settling into the chair next to mine. "Martin would have loved this." "He would have," I agreed, accepting a glass, though he'd be fussing about getting the vegetable garden started. "Too early for tomatoes," Adriana said in a gruff voice that sounded remarkably like Martin's, and we both laughed. The lemonade was tart and sweet, with hints of mint and something else I couldn't quite place. "This is delicious," I said. "Secret ingredient," Adriana winked. "A splash of orange blossom water. My grandmother's trick." We sat in companionable silence, sipping lemonade and watching a pair of cardinals dart among the trees. The breeze lifted my hair and I closed my eyes, feeling the sun on my face. "I finally finished rewriting my will yesterday," I said, opening my eyes. "No more putting it off." Adriana nodded. "Good for you. That's not an easy thing to face." "Actually, It felt liberating. I took another sip of lemonade. I've left the house to the hospice center. They can sell it or use it however they see fit. They'll be grateful, Adriana said. What about your personal things? I smiled. Some specific items to friends, my mother's pearls to my cousin Sarah, Martin's fishing gear to his brother, my books to the school library. I paused. And a substantial portion to you, my dear friend who showed up when I needed someone most. Adriana's eyes widened. Eleanor, you don't have to. I held up my hand. I want to. You've been more family to me these past months than my own flesh and blood. I looked out at the garden, at Martin's daffodils dancing in the breeze. The rest goes to people who show up. That's what matters in the end, isn't it? Who shows up? It is, Adriana said softly. It absolutely is. A robin landed on the bird feeder, tilting its head as if listening to our conversation. It reminded me of Martin, always cocking his head when he was thinking deeply about something. You know, I said, Nicholas called me yesterday. Adriana set down her glass. What did he want? To apologize. Said he'd been under financial pressure, made bad decisions. I shook my head. He wanted to know if there was any way to make things right. What did you tell him? I smiled, remembering the calm that had settled over me during that conversation. I told him I forgave him, but that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. I ran my finger around the rim of my glass. I also told him I'd changed my will. How did he take that? He tried to hide it, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. I laughed softly. He thought I wouldn't notice. He never knew me at all. The breeze picked up, carrying the sweet scent of the daffodils across the porch. In that moment, I felt Martin's presence so strongly it took my breath away, not as a ghost or a spirit, but as the culmination of all our years together, all the love and lessons and quiet moments just like this one. No more secrets, I said, raising my glass. No more fear. Adriana clinked her glass against mine. To Martin, she said. To showing up, I added. And to the daffodils that bloom early, I thought, smiling to myself. He thought I wouldn't notice. He never knew me at all. If you enjoyed this story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.